one of the best and most exciting players to watch in the entire NFL this season. And my current vote for Offensive Player of the Year is Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs because of stats and numbers like these. Now, it's really no surprise that he's had the season that he's had because if you watched him even last year, you kind of knew that some of this stuff was coming. The impact that he has in this offense, the things he can do both in the ground game, through the air as a back, as a receiver, the gravitational pull he just has as a player, as an offensive playmaker, as a weapon is so undeniable. And I'm really excited to kind of dive into what he did against the Cowboys last week that shows you what makes him such an exciting player. Okay, this is a great place to start because it's going to give us a little bit of an appetizer, a little bit of a teaser into what makes him such a unique player, and really because of who he is athletically, right? We see him make the guy miss, fight through tackles, right? This is a very layered player. He's not a guy who just solely relies on athleticism, being a good athlete, and having that ability to flex out, catch passes from different alignments, obviously make guys miss in open field and in space. We kind of saw all that together, right? When I say layered, he can break tackles, he can elude tackles, he's got speed, he's strong, right? He is like the full package as a running back while also giving you legitimate value as a pass catcher. So we're going to see in this first clip, right? He's just going to run this over the ball route, this OTB route, play action. He's going to sit over the ball, present numbers to the quarterback, check down, right, and then he's going to catch it, and then bam, make a guy miss, put his foot in the ground. Now, the ability to make guys miss, elude tackles, stop, start, put your foot in the ground, make guys miss in open field, right, those are certainly not, all those buzzwords and those traits, those definitions, they're not unique solely to Jahmyr, right? In the NFL, there are great athletes everywhere, especially the skill position, but he kind of separates himself because of who he is as what we call, a curvilinear accelerator, right? So when you're accelerating through curves, right, because we know when you're sprinting, when you're running, it's never linear, right? You're carrying speed through the curve, through the turn, all those buzzwords, right? All those key points. That's what separates them because when you see a lot of those guys, have to make an alteration to their path or try to wiggle or adjust while on the move, it's very hard for them to do without gearing down or sacrificing speed. And we're seeing a little bit of that here. Obviously, this isn't the key point or the key clip that I want to use to kind of highlight that. But if you watch Jahmyr, continue watching him throughout the NFL, or if you've seen a lot of him already, you'll notice that. You'll notice that he has that curvilinear acceleration, the ability to kind of maintain and carry speed through those turns, right? We're seeing it there. When he has to alter his path here, there isn't a reduction in speed. He's carrying it through because, as we know, so much of the NFL, so much of what's happening on a football field with the width and the number of players, all those factors involved, it's a changing environment. It's an ever-changing environment. And so you have to have, perceptive ability, the ability to see and recognize and feel and anticipate. It's so much more than just, your athletic ability. Again, as a running back, as a ball carrier, as a guy in space, you have to feel and anticipate and recognize how patterns and changes in players are moving and shifting, especially when you get out into space, right? Guys are closing in on you. We're seeing that here. Obviously, we start to kind of start before we even get to that point. We see, obviously, when he catches this ball and he sticks his foot in the ground, like that's elite. You know what I mean? He's not, again, like we talked about, he's not the only player in the NFL that can make guys miss in the open field. But again, to stick your foot and gain back ground immediately and keep carrying on, and then we see kind of a little example, kind of touching upon that curvilinear acceleration, the ability to accelerate through. And then again, like we talked about, man, the strength, the balance, and the coordination to finish through contact. You can't do all of those things if you aren't a balanced, strong athlete, right? And those two things, there's a marriage there between, strength and coordination and balance, right? Being an on-balance athlete, having that core strength, having that posterior chain strength, to really fight through contact and break tackles. So those are really the key parts that I really think, highlight and make him who he is. And that's just a really good example to kind of start. All right, in this next clip, we're going to see a lot of the same stuff, right? He's going to catch this ball behind the line of scrimmage. So this is one of his longer carries of the day, 19 yards. And we see it right there. Perfect example of the way that he beats DeMarvion Overshown, who's coming over the top, right? So we're going to see him catch this ball. He's accelerating. You can see him start to alter his path already. And this is where it comes in, right? The curvilinear acceleration, the ability to accelerate and maintain carry speed when your path becomes nonlinear. Perfect example, right? DeMarvion Overshown's coming in pursuit. Obviously, a little hot, but it's tough to try to gear down and make tackles, make stops in space. But Jahmyr, he's just too fast. There is no way, there's almost really no way to properly account for and adjust to the way that he carries that speed through that path alteration. And then again, the ability to finish tackles through, finish and break tackles. This is a guy, I'm telling you, the more you watch him, if you haven't seen enough of him in extended time, this is a guy who was rarely brought down on first contact. You're not going to see him hawk down very often relative to, NFL standards. A lot of guys in the NFL are fast now, so getting hawked down, isn't quite as much of an issue necessarily, or something that, you really ding a player for, because guys in the NFL are fast. But I'm telling you, Jahmyr is not a guy who is going to be tracked down very often. He's not going to be taken down on first contact very often. And this is a huge reason why. Because he is such a loose, fluid, again, like we talked about, coordinated athlete. The ability, you're seeing it right there when we had it paused. The ability to, he's sinking his hips, right? He's carrying, look at that. Look at that angle that he is. The way that he's steep with his hips, he's fluid, but his upper body, everything is balanced, right? His upper body is working independently of his lower body to make an adjustment to his path, to make a guy miss, to elude a tackle and find space. Okay, this is a very perceptive athlete. As he's going and carrying vertically, he is seeing and locating out of his periphery what's happening around him, right? DeMarvion Overshown, like we talked about, he's coming in hot, man. He's coming over the top. He wants to make this play. But there's just no way. You're not in a position to match his type of functional athleticism and all of the things that we've been talking about. Also, mind you, the same guy that he beat on that Texas route and had another explosive reception. So, like we talked about, man, this guy's a really, really fluid athlete. You've heard me use the word curvilinear more than you probably ever want to hear again. But that, I think, is really what separates him from a lot of other backs in the NFL. And really kind of ties into, again, like we talked about, just the functional athlete that he is, the balance, the coordination, the strength, even there, right? To stick your foot in the ground and gain ground so quickly. I mean, look at the burst out of the cut. We saw the same thing when he made Overshown miss on the OTB route. Same thing. Put your foot in the ground, get upfield, boom, break a tackle. I mean, the way that he can pinball and elude and kind of slippery, and just all of the traits that he has. And again, for someone like me who's watched him since he was at Alabama, you're not too surprised by it. And even last year, if you watched what we did last year, early parts of his career, this isn't too surprising. But I'm telling you, it's really time to put him under the microscope, like we talked about. Offensive Player of the Year candidate for me. But there's really one more play I want to get into that I think is really exciting. Now, this isn't the play I want to end on, but I do want to highlight it because I just love what the Lions do in the run game. Of course, with 32 NFL teams, it's not like they're doing something exclusively that the other 31 teams aren't doing in some capacity, but the rate at which they do it, the effectiveness, and just the way that they use their personnel, I think is really kind of what separates them. You're going to see, if you haven't watched much of them, you'll see Amon-Ra St. Brown, he'll be the insert guy. They'll insert him through the C gap in the run game, obviously on some of the duo stuff, on some of the lead stuff, and then obviously they'll turn around and use that in the passing game. Well, they'll insert him through the C gap again and send him out on route. So again, the run game specifically, when they get into the red zone, when they get down near the goal line, stuff like this, that they just do really well, right? With the 12 personnel, you're going to have one tight end, all these bodies on the offensive line, right? And here's Dan Skipper, the 6th offensive lineman. And again, they can afford to do this because who Dan Skipper is as an athlete, as a blocker, all that stuff. And they get into these jumbo looks, this heavy personnel, and then you have a back like Jahmyr Gibbs who can take, complete and full advantage of it, right? So look at all those bodies on the offensive line. And this is just duo wrap, right? They're just going to run duo, and they're going to wrap 57 around. And again, when you pack all those bodies into the offensive line, this is naturally the look that you're going to get. All those bodies packed in, boom, wrap him, pull him, get Jahmyr out in space. He's going to press, continue pressing to kind of influence those defenders to run with him, and then he's just going to walk into the end zone untouched. So a really fun play to highlight. Again, highly encourage you to go watch. And there's Dan Skipper celebrating, by the way, number 70. Highly encourage you to go watch, what they do in the run game. But let's get back to this Jahmyr part. Okay, now this is the play I want to end on, and it's actually the touchdown run that comes before the last one that we just watched and kind of broke down. And it's a very similar thought process. Here are your 6 offensive linemen. Here's Dan Skipper. You can kind of see him right here. Your 6 offensive linemen, and there are no tight ends on the field, but that's because of the way they use their personnel again, right? Here's Amon-Ra. Okay, to his left is Jamo, and then here comes Isaac TeSlaa in motion. So again, TeSlaa and Amon-Ra are really kind of cut from the same cloth, right? They're that F-style tight end who will give you just as much in the run game as a tight end, but give you more in the passing game because of who they are as athletes, right? So that's where the distinction comes in. Obviously, there's been a lot of discourse on that over the last couple months, really over the last year, of course, with guys like Brock Bowers coming into the league. We're seeing guys like Tucker Kraft and really the Lions, Sam Laporta, who have those traditional wide tight ends. But when you're the Lions and you have those types of players that you can count on in the run game to be perimeter run blockers, to occasionally dig out end-man line of scrimmages, man, it just allows you to open up the offense more because you don't have to take a receiver body off and put him on with a tight end body who's not going to give you as much in the passing game as a receiver body would, right? So, again, just a long discussion about all that stuff. I highly encourage you to go, a lot of that's being talked about on Twitter and some of those other spaces. Highly encourage you to go read more about it and see, kind of see what's being said. It's a really interesting discussion of just where the NFL is as offenses evolve. You're seeing the increase in productivity for tight ends and just the influence they have, right, in terms of what they can do in the run game and how valuable that is. But we're going to get into it here. Obviously, we saw Isaac TeSlaa go in motion. We're going to see Amon-Ra cut back across the formation here, and this is basically just split zone, okay? Everyone's zone stepping, zone tracks. There goes Amon-Ra, but he's going to insert up into the second level, and then we're going to see Jahmyr take it in, okay? So this is obviously really well designed, really well blocked, and Jahmyr doesn't have to do a whole lot necessarily, relative to how, NFL runs unfold and just what run game responsibilities and all that stuff kind of becomes, right? This isn't exactly that tough of an NFL run, but again, we're seeing the traits and some of those things that we've talked about that just make him so unique and special, man. Just look at the way, I really don't even want to pause it and really break it down. I just kind of want to continue running because you can see it, man. I think you can really get a good idea of what we're talking about. The way that he swivels his hips and changes directions but doesn't slow down, right? He's not having to sacrifice his speed or anything of that nature. And again, you watch the way that he can swivel, kind of like we talked about when he caught, that swing behind the line of scrimmage, just the way that his upper body, almost like an owl, right? Owls don't move their heads, right? They rotate around their body. Very similar thought process with the way that his upper body stays square, stays balanced, while his lower body can, work independently. He's coordinated, he's strong, he's fluid, man. He's all those buzzwords and terms, but you're seeing it, right? The curvilinear nature of what he can do. Press the line of scrimmage. This is a really good, general NFL run, right? Because you're seeing him press the line of scrimmage. This is what you want us to do, right? It's just he's winding it back. It's a wind back, split flow run where everything's pressing front side, they're blocking and they're creating this wall, and then he's just going to wind it, cut it back. I mean, look, like we talked about, not a very difficult run because there's a lot of space afforded to him, but nonetheless, once he gets to that second level, this is where really the run becomes more valuable because of who he is as a player. We saw him change that direction, the curvilinear nature of it again, right? To kind of poke back from behind. Again, changing direction here, he's balanced. You'll see a lot of guys when they run like stiff players, they'll take that offhand, that off arm, and you see him have to kind of wind, right, to stabilize because they can't move their hips, right? They can't swivel or adjust their hips or move their feet or have their feet or lower body work independently of their upper body, right? You'll see a lot of that. I'm telling you, you'll kind of get a good idea of how fluid or loose or stiff, a back or a player is by what they do with that offhand. And they have to stabilize because they just can't turn and swivel quick enough. They're trying to, their lower body's working so fast, it's working into overdrive and working overtime that they have to have something stabilizing it. You won't see that with him. You won't. Obviously, his arm coming up is just kind of the nature of making the run, but never has to do that. He can continue carrying. You can see that right arm pumping as he's making those changes along his path. I'm telling you, this is really, really special stuff. And again, he's still covering ground because of it. Like, look at 14, right? 14, he's late because he just doesn't think or doesn't know if Jahmyr can get there. He's seeing it, right? He sees it right here. His posture right here. He is in a posture to where he's not going to get blocked. The only thing left for him to do is trigger on the ball, right? And Jahmyr's getting vertical. Obviously, you don't want to just fly in and completely over pursue and leave a cutback opportunity open. But look how much ground he covers. He just covers too much ground for 14 to really get there. And then kind of the last part, you see 6. I think that's 6 or 8 coming in. This is an awful posture for him to be in to try to make any type of tackle attempt. But doesn't matter. He's covered so much ground. And again, even that last step that he takes, you're going to see it. Man, it's a power step, right? Not necessarily in actuality, but just more so in functionality, right? He's going to step and power through just too strong, man. Again, right? That's what being that curvilinear type of athlete provides. You can, when you're maintaining that build-up speed, right? And speed becomes power, right? And the mass and the acceleration of force and all that stuff, it becomes the ability to finish and accelerate through contact, especially near the goal line. I mean, this is, again, right? No one watches Jahmyr Gibbs or sees Jahmyr Gibbs like the athlete or the profile of who he is and sees a power back, but he has the ability to power through and break tackle attempts because he has strength, because he has balance and coordination, all those things. So, man, right now, Jahmyr Gibbs, certainly my pick for Offensive Player of the Year. I'm really excited to continue seeing what he does the rest of the way. Obviously, I'm a big Jared Goff fan too, so always going to be watching the Lions, but Jahmyr Gibbs, man, must-see TV.